Hey y'all, welcome back. So today we are going to talk about the sentencing portion of Kaitlin Armstrong's murder trial. You might have noticed that we did not talk about closing arguments, and that is because I actually did closing arguments on LegalBytes stream. So that is going to be linked down in the description. Go check it out. That was available, that was live streamed to everybody because like all the big networks were televising that. So everybody could see that. It's available for you to go check it out. It was interesting. However, I do want to talk about the sentencing portion of this trial because the testimony was not open to the public. And there was a little bit of confusion about how the sentencing phase of the trial in Texas works. First of all, in Texas, you can go to the jury or to the judge for punishment. And in this case, they elected to have the jury decide Kaitlin's punishment. And so she was found guilty. And basically, very shortly thereafter, they went right into the punishment phase of the trial and got into it. Now, usually there's more negotiation in this phase of the trial, right? So in the deliberations between the jurors, I've seen so many instances where, jurors will compromise in this portion of the trial. Like some might go up a little bit on their punishment. Some have to come down. They have to kind of meet in the middle, make compromises in order to have a unanimous decision in this portion. And remember, the punishment range on first-degree murder in Texas is anywhere from 5 to 99 years. It is an enormous range. 5 to 99 or life in prison. I believe because this is first-degree murder, she's eligible for parole after half or 30 years, whichever is less. So let's get into it. To begin with, both sides, the state and the defense, both waived opening and just immediately started calling in their witnesses. The state had witnesses that they were very predictable witnesses. They started off with Kaitlin Cash, the woman who Mo was staying with on the night that she was killed. And Mo talked about how she met the family first while doing social media for a race in Vermont. And she met the family, fell in love with them, and hadn't really officially met Mo until October of 2021 at a race in Bentonville, Arkansas. And she said that Mo saw her from across the after party and waved her over with a double wave and, was so excited to meet her. And they became fast friends. So fast, in fact, that by Christmas of 2021, Kaitlin Cash was spending Christmas with the Wilsons. She actually lived very close, had a place close to them in Vermont. And so they became very good friends. And Jones asks her about May 11th. And she says, can she talk about Mo's last day first? He says, sure. So she starts off talking about how they had been so excited, like two girls will be, getting so excited at the airport, talking to each other, that they actually forgot Mo's checked bag. So they had to go back and pick that up from the airport. And she said they had so much to catch up on. They actually fell asleep next to each other on her queen-size bed, and she let Mo sleep in. Mo had said it was the best night of sleep she had had in quite some time. And she watched Mo build her bike in Cash's living room in preparation for a training ride that she was going to do later on that day. And then before she went on her ride later that day, Cash took pictures and a short video of Mo and texted it to Karen Wilson, Mo's mother, and said, your girl is in safe hands here in Texas. Yeah, that's what she said. Here in Austin. So that caused some crying in the gallery. Then Cash talked about how she actually still lives in the apartment where this occurred and that she's like trying to breathe new life into the space. I don't think she said it that way. She's trying to change the vibe or something. I don't know. She's trying to reclaim the space, right? She talked about how it's very difficult. Like every time she does laundry, she looks at that dent caused by the bullet that went through Mariah Wilson's head. And, you know, that causes her stress, obviously. She said that the tile in the bathroom had to be completely replaced because it was stained and broken so badly, like beyond repair. And it was like the bullet had caused the tiles to crack. And I know I've said previously in some of my earlier videos that the blood was everywhere and it was white tiled, you know, and like if you get blood on grout, you can't get that out. Like you can't get a lot of things out of grout, but definitely not blood. And especially it seemed to stay there for like longer than I thought was necessary. In addition, she talked about how she has panic attacks, and she had the most recent panic attack when she testified during week 1 of the trial. And she said that she thinks about that night and what she could have done differently to protect Mo better every single day of her life, which is sad. And she said it had been 554 days since Mo was killed. And she thinks about it every single day. She said that 10 minutes where she tried to save Mo's life was the hardest 10 minutes of her life. And that she was unaware that Mo was not alive whenever she was doing those chest compressions. So overall, very sad testimony. However, the next person on the stand was Matt Wilson, which was Mariah Wilson's brother. And this started off a tearjerker. Immediately when he got on the stand, he was already crying, and it took him a while to even compose himself in order to be able to testify. And, you know, he testified about how much he loved his sister, how she was his greatest confidant. And he talked to her, especially in the winter of 2021 and the spring of 2022 leading up to her death. He talked to her almost every day. He had been depressed earlier in the year, and Mariah had given him the idea. She had come up with the idea for the both of them that they should call each other every single day and give each other what happened, the highlight of their day, the best part of their day, right? To, you know, encourage them and, I don't know, make him not depressed. And that was like, he was doing really well with that. That had been helping him out a lot. He said that he had really enjoyed watching her career. He was really excited about it. He said it made her really happy, which made him really happy. And he said that he called her on the day that she died, right? And he called her looking for some advice on a bike part that he was going to buy. And he said she was really busy, and she was like, yeah, Matt, just buy the part. And the whole family laughed in the gallery. He says he was really looking forward to her races in 2022. And obviously that didn't get to happen. And he finished his last class ever on May 12th, 2022. So correction, I want to make a correction here. Earlier on in my videos, I had said that Mariah's family didn't find out until the 13th because that's what Spittler, the detective, said. But they found out on the 12th. So they found out the next morning. So that's a lot better than not finding out until like the afternoon of the 13th, right? He says so he was finishing his very last college class ever. He was coming out of a depression, and it was a beautiful day. And he said that his mom and dad came to his apartment and knocked on the door. And when he answered the door, he immediately knew something was wrong. And his dad said, we lost Mariah. And he ran out of his apartment, and he was, I think, crying and screaming. And his mom stopped him and said, it gets worse. And he thought that something might have happened to Kaitlin Cash. And she said that Mariah was murdered. And he said that the hardest thing about watching his parents like go through this and have to tell other people about it and talk about it is that he knows that watching them, he sees their pain, but he knows that each of them have such a different kind of pain. The pain is different for each of them, you know, as parents versus as a sibling. And he said that he said the last time that he had been around her was New Year's of 2021, 2022, and that they had climbed to the top of a mountain in their skis. And he says in the last year and a half, he's really missed her Blossom, and that her life was taken away from her for no reason at all. She'll never get to ride a bike again. She'll never get to take another 20-minute break in order to bake her famous banana bread. She'll never get to get married. She will never get to have children. And she will never get to meet the person that she's going to fall in love with. And the next person on the stand, so that was basically it for him, right? The next person on the stand was Karen Wilson. And she had everybody in the gallery crying, I think, from the moment that she got onto the stand. So I think people were already crying whenever Matt got off the stand. But Karen Wilson's testimony was very hard to get through, and it was hard for her to get through as well. She was crying like very, very hard on the stand for a while, and some people even mentioned that they couldn't even understand the words that she was saying. She had to like have a minute to calm down, or a few minutes to calm down. But she said that her whole life has never been the same since this happened, and that her whole life has been turned upside down. She also said, she said, when you love somebody so much, and if any of you are parents, you know what I mean, and then it's taken away from you, well, the depth of the joy of that love is equal to the depth of the pain that you have to live with. I just miss her so much. I mean, that definitely makes you cry. The jurors, there were multiple jurors that were crying when she was testifying. And yeah, like I said, most of the gallery had been crying. So, and then I saw that Alex said she gave a like angry stare to Kaitlin as she was getting off the stand and walking back to her seat, which, like, you know, who can blame her? She sat behind Kaitlin, behind her, not being able to like look her in the face for 2 weeks, right? So the next person on the stand was Eric Wilson, her father, and he said that he was driving when he got the call that he needed to come back home. And I think like a neighbor or a sheriff or something called him and said that he was there with Karen and he needed to come back home. He said immediately he knew that something had happened to one of his kids, and he can't explain the devastation that you go through. He doesn't sleep well, and it feels like he's living through a bad nightmare, but it's reality. He said he remembers one of the last things that he said to Mariah was that he was so proud of her for, you know, her transition into pro cycling, and she told him that it just feels so right. So that was the end of the state's witnesses. And they're on, they go on the stand to show, well, you know, because the state's going to be arguing for a high punishment from the jury. And so they're on there to show what they lost. They're the victims in this crime, because the decedent, Mariah Wilson, is no longer here. So she is not the victim anymore. They are the victims that can go on the stand and testify, right? As far as the state is concerned, because, well, obviously. Then the defense starts their case, and they call 3 witnesses. They call Kaitlin's dad. They call the chaplain that visits the Travis County Jail, and they call Christine Armstrong, which I know should make all of the people so very happy because they're going to get to ask her the question about the infamous passport. Yay! I know everybody's dying to know. So let's get into this. So Mike Armstrong talks about how, you know, he loves Kaitlin so much. Well, first off, he says he's an engineer. He lives in Michigan, and he talks about how very special Kaitlin was. She's just a very special person. He just loved her from the moment she was born. He talks about her yoga practice and how what a healthy lifestyle she has and how she's a healthy eater, how she loves animals, and she always wanted to be a vet. He stresses that she was athletic and popular in high school. And, you know, here's the thing. Defense stressed this so many times during their during the guilt innocence portion of the trial. They really it really bothered them, and must have really bothered Kaitlin that that Colin had described her as, like, what was it? She rides bikes or something and he's a racer, you know, whatever it was, that terminology where he kind of alluded to the fact that she wasn't as athletic as Mo. And I'm not sure stressing this over and over again worked for them, because it just made it seem like, oh yeah, she was super jealous of Mo. Like, she still can't let that go, right? So her dad brings it up again, how athletic and popular she was in high school, and that she always protected and stuck up for her friends, and she watched out for everybody. She was fearless, and he was in awe of her. And he says it's been a very difficult time for he and his family, but then he also acknowledged that it wasn't nearly as bad as what the Wilsons were going through. I don't know that he helped in mitigation at all. That's what these witnesses for the defense are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be mitigating, right? They're trying to help her get less punishment. Then we get Dr. Judith Knotts, I believe was her name. Again, the chaplain that visits the jail. She has weekly Catholic meetings for the women at the jail. And I think she said that, like, Kaitlin would lead the prayer or something. She says Kaitlin has enriched her life. She brought Kaitlin books because Kaitlin had already read, like, almost all the books that were available to her at the jail. And she says that Kaitlin is kind and very empathetic. And she tells a story about a woman in the cell next to Kaitlin that had been, like, screaming at all hours of the night and day. And that Kaitlin taught this inmate to meditate. And that once she learned how to meditate, the screaming stopped. And it's just like, again, if she was that good at teaching how to meditate, why didn't she meditate on May 11th? Why? Anyway, then it was Kristen Armstrong, and she was crying when she got on the stand. She said her heart is broken for the Wilsons, and then the defense asks her if her testimony is going to provide a better picture of Kaitlin, and she said, I hope so. She said that Kaitlin was a guiding light for her, and that she taught her manners and to be a better person and about conflict resolution. Yeah, let that one sink in for a minute. Taught her about conflict resolution. The irony. And she says that she and Kaitlin were best friends. She says that she was like a baby when her parents got a divorce, so Kaitlin was like a second mom to her. And she says that Kaitlin studied finance in college and was brilliant at it. Kaitlin moved to Austin in 2012, and later Christine moved from Michigan to California, and Kaitlin followed her. And then Kaitlin ended up moving back to Austin. And then in 2019, Christine followed her to Austin. They also traveled around the world together. She said that she's always been a loving, beautiful, bright light, and that she's always been such a caring person, and she loves her so much, and she hates that she's been painted in a bad light. And so then we see the first cross-examination of this entire portion of the trial, and it is Mr. Ricky Jones. And he asks her, like, you know, your sister murdered Mo Wilson. And she said, I respect the jury's verdict. And he said, did you give your sister your passport? And she said, no. And Jones says, oh, she stole it? And Christine said, I didn't give it to her, so she must have taken it. And that was the end. Kaitlin did not testify, obviously. And then they went back and, oh, no, they didn't go back. So what happened is they ended for the night. And the next morning, what happens is they come in and the state and the defense both give closing arguments to the jury for the verdict, right? And so that's when they both get to ask for a certain amount of time. And I will just tell you now that the state ended up saying, like, start at a base of 40 years and work your way up. And the defense didn't ask for any amount, which I find super interesting because the defense also, if you'll remember, filed a motion for community supervision. So which is probation, right? So they filed this motion so that she could get community supervision, but you can only get that if you're sentenced to 10 years or less. So I'm not sure, like, why did they file that at the beginning, right? They knew they were going to go to the jury for punishment, and they filed that. Like, they just filed that just because then they didn't even ask the jury to start at 10 years or for less time than that. So there would have been no way she can get community supervision if you don't start it at 10 years. And they didn't even ask for them to start at 10 years. I don't know if they forgot about that part or what. I mean, clearly they weren't going to get it, but I don't know how you don't even ask for it. Also, they didn't put on, like, any doctors or anything to talk about, like, her mental health. And I know that they had filed some kind of I believe I remember that they had filed a motion to have her examined, maybe, or maybe the state had filed it. Somebody, her mental health was brought into the sphere, if you will, through some kind of emotion. I'm not sure that the jury ever heard anything about it, but definitely it was behind the scenes. It was being discussed, and I'm not sure why they didn't put that in front of the jury. They didn't do much. I don't think that any of their witnesses did much to help mitigate the sentence that came. And then I will just go ahead and tell you now, because you can go and watch the closing arguments on your own on YouTube. They're all over the place. I know that LegalBytes did a stream, and I did a stream with her as the verdict came in, the punishment verdict, and she got 90 years. I know I said that in the last video, but I got to stress to you, 90 years is like forever long. It's a very long time. And I think that, maybe the jury would not have changed their mind at all if they had heard anything about, I think the jury could have maybe had a different opinion if there had been more mitigation evidence. There was just none. So, yeah, so she ended up with 90. I guess, it was 9 years less than the max. So that's a win. I don't know. No, very, very, very not great outcome for the defense, obviously, like pretty much the worst case scenario for them. Wonderful job for the state. They hit it out of the park all the way to the end. Anyway, go watch the streams on LegalBytes if you want to see closing or the verdict watch. I will link that in the description. And that is the end for the Kaitlin Armstrong trial. come back and visit the channel, and I will be covering new cases shortly. Thanks, guys. Bye. Oh, before I go, like and subscribe and share. Okay, bye.